In the fall of 21, when Fire Shut Up in My Bones opened here at the Met, you became the first Black composer to have an opera presented in this house. But what you were talking about at that time were the composers before you whose operas hadn't gotten to the Met.
Right.
William Grant Still, Scott Joplin,
Yes.
so many. And you said, I may be the first, but I'm not the first who's qualified.
Right.
And I love that you were giving honor to that. And this is something that I think about so much in the world of classical music, because this story of the first and the
Yes.
only, right?
Yes.
That's sometimes the only story we hear, and it erases the important story of lineage. So you, as a jazz musician, your roots are in lineage. Like, that's how you
Yes.
build your musicianship, is on this known and felt and breathed lineage. And I'm wondering how it feels to you to step into this space where that knowledge is just starting to come to the foreground.
It's interesting because, you know, I just did a gig with Herbie Hancock, right, over the weekend. And I'm on the stage with him feeling blessed, you know, sharing a moment with him because of his lineage to Miles Davis, Miles Davis's lineage to Dizzy Gillespie, Louis Armstrong. And you start to feel honored to pick up that energy from people. Here, it's a little different, you know, because there are too many firsts still to have here. I think that's the big problem. You know, women being represented here, you know, people of all different backgrounds, you know, being represented. That still has to happen. And I think when that happens, then we could just start to really relax and just deal with the musical content of everything. Because that's the thing that really, that we all love and enjoy. I mean, you know, we're music nerds.
Yes.
So for us, it's about what's on the page.
Yeah.
You know, all of that other stuff, it's you know, it's history, and it matters, you know, because we want full representation. But I didn't come here for that.
No.
You know, as a matter of fact, when Peter asked me to bring Fire Shut Up in My Bones here, we didn't even talk about that. That wasn't a part of the conversation. It was a journalist, I forgot his name, who first asked me the question about it. And that was the first time I heard of it. So and I still didn't think it was true.
Right.
You know, because I'm like, no way, this is New York City, man. That can't happen here. But now I'm hoping that with the willingness of Peter and Yannick and everybody here at the Met to do more operas, more current operas, that you're going to see a wealth of talent and expression come to this room, which is really something that the entire industry needs and deserves, I think, because I see so many talented singers, man. It's amazing. You know, you can tell that they're not getting the opportunities that they deserve because they constantly prop each other up.
There's a community.
There's a community there that is in full support. You know, when Brittany got the role in Fire in Chicago at the Lyric, man, so many of her friends flew in town for the premiere. You know, I'm like, what are you doing here? Oh, we had to come support. And I love that, you know, but it speaks to a larger issue of underrepresented people, you know, in the industry. And you know, we have to address it. It's going to be a long road ahead of us, but you know, hopefully things will turn around.
So in the fall of 2021, I was working on a project that was centered around the Harlem Renaissance, and so I kept coming across references to Shuffle Along, which in 1921 was the first Broadway show by an all-Black creative team.
Oh, wow.
At least the first very successful one.
I didn't know that. Okay.
And Langston Hughes calls that the start of the Harlem Renaissance.
Wow.
And it was such a disconnect in my head, as you say, to be, you know, because there was a lot of press about Fire.
Right, sure.
100 years, fully 100 years later. And you're right. I mean, the tempo of that is all wrong.
It is. It is. And this is New York City. That's the thing that got me about this. This is New York. You know, this is the place where it's all supposed to happen. This is the melting pot. This is the city that's supposed to be the representation of what the country is supposed to be, in my mind. So I was shocked at that idea that, you know, it had been so long. And I think, you know, now I'm excited about the future because it's you know, it's so interesting because, you know, people kept talking about me being the first African American, but it's not just that. It's the culture.
Yeah.
It's all of it. You know, so many of the singers, you know, had in the production of Fire and in Champion, they grew up in the church, and when they entered into this realm, they're told to turn all of that off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And my thinking is, I get it because that music didn't exist when Puccini was writing Turandot or any of those things, right? So I get that, but that shouldn't apply to me.
No.
You know what I mean? It here, we should be able to use all of those colors and tones to tell stories. And I'm excited about the possibility of it because you have those in our community who are strictly traditional opera singers. You know what I mean? That's what they studied from the time they started singing. And then you have those who were jazz singers who became opera singers. Then you have those who were church people who became opera singers. And my thing is bring all that to bear.
Yeah.
Put it all on the table, because we're trying to expand this music, and we're trying to expand the audiences. I'll never forget when we did Champion in New Orleans. There was a gentleman, and looked like he could have been in his 70s. And that's important to me because we tend to look at, more mature people as being stuck in their ways,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
But he came up to me and after the show, after the production, and he said, "If this is opera, I'll come."
I love that.
So he saw himself and his culture on the stage in an operatic setting. And that meant a lot to him. And I think that's what we have to really be cognizant of in this business, because those of us who are musicians, of course, I can listen to Turandot. I can listen to, I haven't listened to the Ring Cycle lately because that'll take all your time.
You're too busy.
You know what I mean? But I love that music. I can listen to Salome all the time, but that's not for everybody. And I think what we have to understand is we need to create stories and create operas that relate to people's lives today.
Is it affecting how you write for this space?
You know what? It did at one point, but there was a gentleman I talked to a while ago, and he said, "Man, just write." He said, "You need to write what it is you're feeling." It's a complex thing, because Art Blakey used to tell us when I was playing with him. He said, "Listen, man, the easiest thing to do is to write some music nobody can play. Anybody can do that. You know what I mean? It's like just put 100 notes on a page." So I'm not trying to do that, but what I am trying to do is represent a culture in this room, and that's that can be new for other people, and it's definitely new for both groups of folks coming together. But the cool thing about it, when we were doing Fire, man, it gelled.
Yeah.
Because when it works, it works. It's like you go, oh, see, that's what I was conceiving in my mind, But there's always this period of because listen, how many chances does an orchestra get to play a jazz opera here? Yeah. How many chances do the jazz musicians to play an opera, period? You know what I mean? So everybody goes back to their own devices at some point. But it's exciting to experience, and it gives me ideas about where to go in the future with other stories, because the more, it's like anything else. When I was doing film, well, I'm still doing film, but when I started doing film, the more films I did with orchestras, the more experience I got, the more I started to understand how to make things work. So it's the same thing here. I'm learning more about the voice now than I ever have in my entire life.
Than you ever wanted to.
Oh my God. It's crazy. It's really crazy.
You're talking about your opera Champion, which is on stage now.
Yes.
Your first opera, but your second opera to come to the Met, which makes you the first Black composer to have two operas.
Yeah.
I think there's also a joy on the part of the musicians. I just played Ellington's New World A-Comin' out on the West Coast.
Oh, nice.
And the orchestra musicians were so excited and
Yes.
so grateful. And they came to me and
Yes.
said, "Thank you for bringing this music to us." Because I think, look, all of us who have a classical training, we know we're missing some fun. We know we're missing some sounds. We know that, we're getting constrained by tradition. And then I think there's also a fear of approaching anything
Right.
new. So this hybridization of sound, it's going to be so healthy. For the future of
It
the music.
definitely is going to be healthy, because I think, with anything else, anything in life, if you're doing it over and over, there's a certain type of complacency that falls into place, And it's really interesting because with that complacency, there's still interest. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Even though some of these singers are, they're highly trained and beautiful voices, and they're immensely talented. But when they talk to me about the music they listen to before the show, it has nothing to do with what they do. And I know that there's probably a yearning to express themselves in a different fashion at times. Not to say that you always want to do that, but you want to, listen, with the type of talent that's walking around this building, they could do a lot of things.
Yeah.
They could do a lot of things. So why not express that?
Yeah.
And give them room to do that. So, I get excited about what the future holds for some of these opera singers, man, because I know the talent that's on that stage. And I know what they're itching to do, and it's funny because when I wrote Champion, man, I just felt like I was just like a fish out of water, like, okay, let me just do this. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll just go back to being a jazz musician.
You have a good day job.
Yes, yeah, I was already covered. This is some lagniappe, as we say in New Orleans. This little extra, yeah.
You talk about this community that you see around these singers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, when I thought about that in 2021, that 100 years and the start of the Harlem Renaissance, and what did the Harlem Renaissance really mean? It meant that all of these things were born and created because of community, because of collaboration. And I do think that energy among artists, and now if you add in external support and awareness and excitement, I feel like this next period of time is going to be extremely fruitful.
Let me tell you, it's so crazy that I get all the credit for these operas, man. But there are so many people who are contributing ideas to it.
Well, you're creating the space for them to do that.
I get that. I understand that. Mm-hmm. I do. I understand that. But at the same time, they're bringing so much stuff to it that I could never imagine. Yeah. It's just beautiful to see. I mean, and I'm still scratching my head. I'm like, I don't know how the hell I got here, but this is weird. It's so bizarre for me. I was supposed to be Miles Davis, the next Miles Davis in my mind. Wayne Shorter. And here I am over here, working with these opera singers and directors, and Peter Gelb's walking up to me talking about, hey, man, what do you think about this scene? I'm like, this is surreal. It's just crazy. It's really crazy because the thing that I think about now is what little kid is thinking about writing opera. Yeah. That's what my mind is now, and I hope I meet that kid, and I hope I could help that kid in some way or some form, because all you got to do is believe. Yeah. And that's a hard thing sometimes because society always tells us not to. When I was a kid, people told me not to be a jazz musician because you weren't going to make any money, you weren't going to be able to support a family and all of this stuff. I kept hearing all the negative sides of it, and I guess I was too dumb to really let it take hold, But I'm glad I didn't let it grab me in a negative way because I've had such a fruitful career, and all of it stems from me seeing my heroes and then getting a chance to meet my heroes. You know what I mean? Like meeting Miles Davis, Dizzy Gillespie, and all of those guys. That had a profound impact on me, because in a weird way, they remind me of my dad. Mm-hmm. They had this serious passion for stuff, wasn't becoming famous for it, weren't making, they didn't make a ton of money from it, but had a serious passion, right? And now I think about any little kid because of social media and the way things are now, it's more accessible, especially when we did the HD broadcast. Here a lot of people saw that. Yeah. A lot of people were telling me they took their kids to see it. And it made me think about something I did with Herbie Hancock when we were moving the Monk Institute to New Orleans. We had a press conference and we busted in about 400 kids to come and hear Herbie and Wayne Shorter play. And Herbie says, we just got to grab one or two of those kids. Because if we grab them, they'll influence the rest. Mm-hmm. So now multiply that by the number of people who saw the HD broadcast. Right. Yeah. We just need to grab a few of those kids. Yeah. And then the rest will be history.
Let them fly.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.